Hi there, this is Saul Sharonan from Saul Sharonan Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review is Patrick, directed by Tim Milliance. It's a Belgian film from 2019, and this is on the Anti-Worlds label. As we know, with Anti-Worlds, it can be somewhat hit or miss. You probably knew I would get to this one. This is about a 38-year-old man who helps run a nudist camp with his parents, and one of his hammers goes missing. Yep, it's a total Anti-Worlds release. This was apparently 15 years in the making. The director himself went to a nudist camp when he was a child, on a family holiday, and it was run by a mother and a son. The mother was blind, as in this film, and she didn't realise it was actually the son had turned it into a nudist camp. So the blind mother in this one doesn't know that either. The father is in ill health, and the son kind of keeps to himself. He is a bit kind of socially awkward. He obviously keeps to himself. He does his carpentry. He creates these wonderful looking chairs and helps around the camp. The camp is full of regulars who come every year in various states of undress. You could argue making it a nudist colony or a nudist camp kind of will make it titillating, but it's not titillating in any way. These are not spectacular bodies, and the director gets out of the way immediately as we're introduced to Patrick floating naked on his back on the lake, and then he comes in and he says hello to everybody, and everybody comes towards the camera in the buff. This is a film that doesn't titillate the nudity whatsoever. It's just everyday, and it's just horrible looking flesh sacks that we all are. So if you're looking for kind of titillation, this isn't the film. But again, I guess it helps sell the film and it gives it an extra quirk. Now, you're either going to go along with Patrick because he is very withdrawn, he doesn't say much, and when he doesn't say, and the things he does say, it takes a long time for him to actually express it. So you're either going to get frustrated by that and probably switch the film off, or you're just going to go with it. But I think if you go with it and you're in the right mood, it is an enjoyable little film. Not a huge spoiler, but his father, who's in ill health and he runs the camp, there's a couple who kind of want to run the camp, who are kind of always a bit mouthy at the group meetings, and his father, who breathes through tubes, he ends up getting taken to hospital and he ends up dying, and then Patrick is left to run the camp. But more importantly than his father's death, one of his hammers has went missing. He has everything in sets, and somebody has taken his hammer, and for him that's more important than his father's death, or he can focus on that rather than focusing on the big problem of trying to run the camp without his father, and it becomes a story about how to cope with grief by focusing on something else. So it's actually very similar thematically to another Anti-Worlds film, Dogs Don't Wear Pants, which is one of my favourite films from last year that I saw. This is also from 2019, but this is Finnish, and this is about a widower. I keep calling widowers widows. This is about a man who loses his wife in a drowning accident, and he kind of deals with the grief through a dominatrix and suffocation games. But this one is far superior to Patrick, but it's similar themes of how to deal with grief and how to come to terms with grief. But in Patrick, he's so obsessed with getting his hammer back, and it leads to kind of amateur gumshoe stuff of trying to get his hammer and finding out what happened to his hammer, as the local police chief, who has a soft spot for him, kind of tells him, how to do an investigation, and how not to let your emotions get the better of you, and focus on the hammer. We're actually given little clues that we maybe don't notice while we're watching it of who actually did it. I'm not going to spoil that, because that's got a whole deep reasoning for why the hammer was taken. And onto the campsite comes Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords and What We Do in the Shadows fame, who is only nude once and his decency is hidden by a guitar. Most of the time he actually wears some clothes. And his girlfriend, or one of his girlfriends, and he has a nice turn as a pop star, who is quite taken by Patrick, because Patrick doesn't have a clue who he is, despite him singing at him these terrible sentimental love songs at him, and he just doesn't have a clue who he is, which Jermaine Clement likes that, but you can always tell he's hurt because he's not recognised. And his girlfriend kind of is fascinated by Patrick, which is maybe a little bit of a stretch, considering she's a really attractive woman, and Patrick is this strange kind of withdrawn character, but she's taken by his carpentry and his chair design. She tells him that she knows somebody that sells unique furniture, and he could make a living, but it's his loyalty to the camp and trying to keep the camp, but his mother doesn't actually care about the camp once the father dies. She says you can sell it for apartments or you can blow it up. And as we get closer to finding what happened to the hammer, there's all manner of things that happen to Patrick. He is used by the wife of the guy who wants to take over the camp, who's very slimy and weaselly. He's used for sex basically by this woman in exchange for jam and marmalade. So there's a lot going on. Again, like I say, with all Anti-Worlds films, you're either going to go with it and have some fun with it, or you're just going to switch it off after like 15 minutes. And again, I wouldn't blame you either way, to be honest. It does have one of the most moving funeral scenes that I've seen in a long time. It's absolutely beautiful. The music is absolutely beautiful, and it's a haunting, moving funeral scene. And again, the central performance is really good. Granted, again, He doesn't say a lot, and when he does say it, it's usually about his hammer. But he does. It takes a lot to get words out of him, and again, that's probably going to frustrate some people. But again, if you go with it, it's an enjoyable little film, and I do like the way that the nudity is just completely forgotten about and not used for like titillation or anything, because the people do not have the most attractive bodies in the world, like the majority of people in the world, because allegedly, you know, it took 15 years to come to the screen, because at one point it was going to be, if Patrick was going to be a terrorist, because the nudist camp that the director went to as a kid in the Pyrenees, I believe, somebody organised a terrorist attack from it. So at one stage the film was going to be about Patrick was going to be a terrorist, before it changed to a man who's lost his hammer, but when he realises through various incidents that I won't get into that he'll never see his hammer again, that's where the emotion in Patrick finally comes out. So yeah, a fun little film about dealing with grief under the guise of losing your hammer. I mean, we've all done it. But I would probably recommend Dogs Don't Wear Pants more. I think that's an absolutely fantastic film. Again, about dealing with grief and the different ways that people deal with grief. So thanks very much for watching this random review of Patrick, a story of a man who runs a nudist camp, who loses his hammer. And hopefully you'll join me again for slightly less random reviews. Please let me know in the comments if you've seen Patrick and what you think of it. What's your favourite funeral scene in films? Because the one in Patrick is quite beautiful. And hopefully you'll join me again. This is Soldier Ronan from Soldier Ronan Films, saying farewell.